let's talk about another public intellectual that influenced you. I mean that you
Well, it's funny,
consider.
we've got to four, Camus, Foucault, and Orwell all dead, but curiously relevant for all sorts of reasons today and age. But this person's still alive, albeit just celebrated his 90th birthday, and that's the German intellectual Jurgen Habermas. And I just published this month a piece on Habermas. And obviously, I think, I mean, I'm half Irish, but I'm also half Austrian, increasingly much more conscious of my Germanic rather than my Irish side, if that makes sense. And so I get Habermas in a way, certainly a lyrical culture or a culture of florid excess would not. Habermas starts off in the 1950s, funny enough, dallying with the postmodernists, with Althusser and part of the critical satire movement. But I think he quite quickly sees, as anybody of sense and rationality would, what a bunch of fraudulent posers they actually were. And he moves away from them very quickly. And if you were to break down the salient themes of why he's important, again, a common theme, again, not a lawyer, but someone who gravitates towards the emphasis on legalism and the rule of law. Not uncritically. He's very critical of Judge and Co., as Bentham would call it, although he varies, but he's largely critical of the German Constitutional Court for decisions because he believes they do not promote a broadly socialist agenda. I mean, he still classifies himself as a Marxist, but he's a Marxist in a very empiricist sense of the term. But he is also a believer in institutional control and the rule of law. And it's very interesting how many Marxists ultimately are as well. The great English historian E.P. Thompson, for all his Marxism, in his famous book Whigs and Hunters, ultimately said the rule of law is an inherent good, it's a controlling force, it's a check on arbitrary and tyranny and authority, that the upholding of human rights, legalism, fair procedures, hearing both points of view, non-corrupt judges, and all the other attributes of it are a way of gluing society together. And Habermas believes that. In conjunction, and it's an important point lost in the mix of our age of ideological conservative extremism, a Marxist can not just be a legalist, but can believe in democracy. If you look at the great Antonio Gramsci, the Italian communist leader, he was a believer in the notion of coalition hegemonic involvement with the bourgeois party. So Habermas is a believer in the German state with modifications. One very interesting thing is his big idea, in a way, is this concept, which he, again, influenced by a positivistic tradition, influenced by John Austin, one of the earlier English positivist philosophers, we mentioned Bentham twice already, is this concept of ideal speech that Austin develops. And Habermas's big idea is communicative action. And what it is the decisions, political decisions, decisions of management, decisions of business administration, any important significant decisions, you can transpose the concept, should be dealt with in what he calls salon-driven conditions. He's referring to the salons of the Enlightenment of the 18th century, where people would sit down and discuss things after dinner or in closed quarters in an open-ended discussion of reasoned deliberation, where points of view were respected, where they weren't tainted by ideology or weren't tainted by corruption or vested interests. And therefore, within that discussion, as long as the right people are there, I don't mean right as in right wing, as long as people are there who are speaking sincerely a point of view which stands up to a reasonable level of scrutiny, then through that conversation of communicative action, solutions can emerge to technical problems that are reasonable. Now, Habermas's attitude towards technology or technical decisions is very interesting, and I think of curious relevance to this day and age, which is we are dealing with a world dominated by technology, and we've lost control of it at a certain level. We've lost control of the power of the internet and social media to manipulate us with disinformation and our purchasing choices and consumerism. the rewarping of human identity towards Homo economicus and the neoliberal agenda, the automation of so many things, leading potentially to cyborgs or robots controlling much of the workforce, but perhaps also rendering many of us unemployable. And these were ideas that Habermas dealt with as well. And he's been around a long time. In the late 60s and 50s, there was a guy who also came from that kritische theory school called Herbert Marcuse. And he believed nothing wrong with all of this automation, machines. There'll be plenty more time for leisure time and play and so on. Not true. That's not what the neoliberals have in mind at all. The human beings will not be supported to have a proper lifestyle if they get their grubby paws and things. For example, if Donald Trump gets his grubby paws in the NHS, that won't happen at all. Quite the contrary. And Habermas's point, unlike Marcuse, he hasn't a faith in technology. Now, it doesn't mean you're a Luddite, and it doesn't mean you're a reactionary to want to go back to a pre-industrial age. That's not the perspective at all. It means that any technical solution, Habermas says, has to input into a technical output, to use technical jargon, a moral basis. And you can't have a technical solution to any human problem without a moral understanding of what you're doing. And the problem in this day and age is in the professions, and I've written something in the Atten Standards at all levels, people are being encouraged to think purely technically. Now, obviously, if you're a doctor performing heart surgery, as I was doing today, a criminal defense lawyer in a court case, you have to think technically, yeah. But you also have to think morally. And it is the duality of both of those thought processes that leads to correct decision making. And that above all else, as well as his faith in direct democracy and popular democracy, and his belief in the vitalizing force of civil disobedience, and his belief in the rule of law and legalism, is his strong relevance and commitment to this day and age.